Welcome to the Mythic Movie Maker podcast, where we analyze movies from a mythological perspective. My name is John, and today we have Simon E. Davis with us, well, why don't you tell everyone about yourself and your
Um,
projects?
I'm a sort of mythographer. Just collect myths, I explore them. I'm quite creative with them. I'm trying to write a myth for the 21st century. So I look into the craft of myth making, how our ancestors made myths, and how is it possible to make one for the 21st century. So yeah, just a bit of a player of myths. That's me in a nutshell. And like you, both of us have had experience in gripping and
Yeah.
working behind the scenes of television. So we both that was a connection. I always thought it was quite funny that we both did grip work.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting because it's like you kind of see fantasies being constructed in a way, right? And it's actually very boring. To see it
Yeah,
from the outside, yeah.
yeah.
But that's kind of a bit what myth making is, you know. It's I always that's why I was so attracted to myths without even like knowing much about mythology is because it just dovetailed so well into films. Like
Hmm. Hmm.
film has as like sort of the medium is the message. The medium of film is a myth making medium. In my
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
There's we're going to talk about Dead Poet Society today,
Oh
aren't
yeah,
we?
yeah. Sorry, yeah.
And well, I was just going to no, I wasn't saying that as a let's get on point. It was more about the
Okay,
fact that
sure.
I was very shocked how many mythical tropes were in there. For me, it was more from an
Hmm.
archetypal point of view, the archetypes. I could see them all very clearly, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. So yeah, we'll dig into that shortly. But yes, very much a myth-based industry.
I guess the question is, why do we make myths? Like, what's the point?
So yeah, I
Not
was
to put you
talking
on
to
the spot, sorry, but
why do we make myths?
yeah.
I suspect I like to imagine it like this. I like to think about our ancestors sort of right back in the Stone Age, well, yeah, the old Stone Age. So possibly not that far back, but I just like the idea of them sitting around in caves and they've got a copious amount of meat, they've got a copious amount of water, they're all secure, and they get to sit down and chill out and think about things. And I just wonder if in deep history there was an elderly man who'd gone through many cycles of life and he was reflecting on it and thinking to himself, when you get enough time and you get enough and you're secure and you don't have to worry about survival, and once you've sort of got your tribe is secure and everything seems to be pretty safe, you go into this sort of, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So once you've sorted all the lower stuff out, the upper stuff starts coming to effect, and that's when I think these cavemen started having time to think. When they got time in their hands, you can start seeing the cave art starts appearing as if they started to unlock something and they started to discover something because they were able to explore their curiosity. And I think so. What the question was, why do we make myths?
Yeah, I guess what's the,
I think it's
not
an
that it needs a
instinct.
purpose, but
I
it,
think it's an instinct. That's my thoughts on it. I think we have an instinct to understand what the world around us. You're trying to orientate yourself around, where am I? How did I get here? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What is the meaning of all of this? And these are natural questions. I think they're instincts. And I think that when you have those instincts, then imagination kicks in and you start to think in abstract ways. And I would say one of the things I've noticed about myth is that very often we're talking about this now with Dead Poet Society, but I think our ancestors started to see patterns in nature. And a simple example would be if you saw one tribe of people who were raiding a lot and they were aggressive and violent and hostile, and then another tribe further down the river might be quite good at building walls and protecting their tribe, and they're more structured and organized. So one's a bit like chaos and one's a bit like order. And then you might find that in the tribe, some people are good storytellers, some people are natural healers, some people are great at hunting, and these archetypes start to appear, these personality types. And I think our ancestors noticed that certain animals, certain tribes were like wolves. They were dangerous and hostile. And others were like bears, very strong and powerful. And if you met them at the wrong time, they could literally take a club to you and take out your family or something. So I think that we started seeing human-like behavior in animals, and we started to reflect on, well, if you can see human behavior in animals, can you see it in trees? And we may have mentioned this before, but Thor and Zeus are both linked to the oak tree and to the well, less so for Thor, but for Zeus, he's linked to the eagle and to Mount Olympus, and the brightest star in the sky, he's linked to Jupiter. He's linked to the bull, the strongest land mammal, one of the most powerful ones there are. So everything about Zeus, our ancestors had drawn a pattern between all of these little attributes of different animals and across different domains. So they were connecting animals and trees and stars and mountains. So they started to draw a line through those things and say Zeus is that thing that is always the mightiest animal, the mightiest bird, the mightiest star, the mightiest sort of even weather. They'd say he's the storm because he represents the most powerful weather condition there is.
Well,
So I
and
think they
then
would.
and then you have like a king, and he's sort of embodies Zeus.
You've got it exactly that. So he it would almost be like this is Zeus's avatar on Earth, and he has the spirit of Zeus. And I think and if you look study Aboriginal mythology, they used to consider their tribes were linked to animals. They would say we are from the kangaroo tribe, or we are the I don't know the wombat tribe. I'm trying to think of all the different animals in Australia, but they saw themselves in the animal kingdom. They were projecting their own consciousness and seeing it reflected back at them through the animals. Even through the ones who were very good poets were seeing it themselves reflected in nature, in the weather. They could see weather conditions. They could see these relationships between human emotion and human impulses and the way the weather systems work. So I think it's an instinct, and I think that we are pattern hunters and we see patterns. And some people will think those patterns are just purely creative and call it fiction. And other people, more like myself, might see those patterns and think they're seeing deeper into the nature of reality, which is why I think myths are sacred stories. They're telling us something about the nature of reality that is not just material. It's not just a
Yeah.
sort of physical reality. It's saying there's more to it than that.
Well, what
So
you're doing is you're sort of following that string, right?
yeah, yeah,
From things that you can see on Earth, like strong bull, strong man, strong tribe, but you're actually going above what you can see and following that
yeah.
string up into sort of like the ether lands
it's
and
it's
then
abstract. It's a very
the
abstract way of
abstract.
thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're connecting these different domains and also different scales as well. Because if you're looking at geological land masses and you're saying I can see, the idea there's a mountain might be a sleeping giant, or that the gods live on the top of a mountain and the mountain belongs to Zeus, for instance, going back to Zeus again. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're drawing a line that goes through different domains and different scales. So they can they can see themselves in wild animals, and they can see themselves in hills and mountains and the sun and the moon. So they're collecting completely vastly different domains that should theoretically have nothing to do with each other. And yet our ancestors are going, no, 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 no. There's a pattern here that connects all of them. And they would see that as a sort of archetype. So I will show you the archetypes, some of them that are in the characters in the story.
Oh,
It's a normal,
wonderful.
it's a normal thing to see, isn't it? We know about the archetypes. You always see different archetypes in most film and TV, but Dead Poet Society, I could see them very distinctly laid out. It's very well done.
Yeah, we'll get to that right away. But that you sparked a thought in me that mythology is like, okay, say we're cavemen. This is a really interesting thing to imagine. The entire world must be so entirely confusing. You're dropped into this thing that makes basically no sense. Like,
Mm,
there's all these rules you don't understand. We rely on our instinct, like animals do, to sort
mm,
of like understand it. And mythology is sort of a non-scientific way of understanding the world around you.
mm,
It sort of acts, all these archetypes act as a sort of shorthand
mm.
for an explanation
Very
for
much
the
so.
world. you know?
They
So like
compressed lots of information down into a single symbolic image. It's very
exactly,
powerful.
because you can't like explain, it's the telephone game. If you're like explaining generationally all these aspects of nature, it's not, first off, it's boring, so
Mm.
no one's going to listen. And secondly, it's just too long. You're going to lose a lot of valuable information. So yeah, they compress it down into a mythological tale, and it can way more easily be passed down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another way I think about it is, I think I mentioned this to you before. You've got horizontal thinking and vertical thinking. So horizontal thinking is where you're pretty much sticking to a domain and you explore it laterally across all areas. So if you're interested in science, you dig into physics. You might focus on atomic physics. You might focus on I don't know, at different kinds of energy. But you're focused in that field and that one domain, and then you become specialized in it. You learn that field in great depth, in great detail, but it's very specific. It's very specific, and it's quite flat. It doesn't give you any depth to other things going on beyond that. But then you get autodidactic people or polymaths who start grasping different domains and different ideas, and they start linking them all together, and that's when you start thinking almost vertically. So you're connecting dots and seeing, rather than seeing breadth, you're seeing depth. So you're almost like seeing through time. You're connecting domains that have been separated by time and space, and yet when you start to connect them together, you start connecting these dots, something that shouldn't be connected, that shouldn't be similar, that should be so different, that should be alien to each other, and yet you see the same archetypes appearing again and again and again. So seeing something powerful and dominant and something that's always the top of a hierarchy, in stars and in weather systems and in, like I said, trees as well. You look at the Greek gods; they all have different trees. People don't think about it, but each people don't realize that all the gods have a different tree. And they're saying this tree is linked to this deity, and this tree is linked to this
Well,
goddess.
what's
And
interesting is speaking of the Celts, they did that same thing. They all put their gods in trees.
the ogam as well was carved into bark on a tree, which is an ancient Celtic language, and so
Oh,
they had a lot of the druids and so on were very connected to their trees, very much
yeah.
so.
On that
Go
note,
on.
let's get started the movie
Yes, let's
because
let's look
that
into
was a
some
thing
archetypes.
last time. Was I was like, we uh we were having so much fun chatting about mythology, we barely talked about the movie. So
Yeah, so some people probably find this stuff like really trippy, like what is this guy talking about? But it's when you study mythology, you start to think in a different way. It's
yeah,
quite
you
strange,
have
isn't
a
it?
different mind. Yeah, you become a vertical thinker. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how I think of it, as vertical thinking, very much so. You start if you get too carried away, you start connecting patterns that aren't there, and you start being one of those people that have gone crazy and they get all these magazine cutouts and they've got string stretching across different sort of images, and you can get like that sometimes. So there is a shadow side to it as well. You can get lost in crazy patterns.
Yeah. But I think a lot of the things that we were just talking about do apply heavily to this movie, like you were saying. In terms of archetypes, like I think there were four main characters in this movie. It was an ensemble.
Hmm.
There were many characters in this movie, but I think the four main ones are Keating, obviously, Todd, the Ethan Hawke character,
Neil,
Neil, and I,
Knox. He's Knox is the one who falls in love with the girl, and Charlie is the one who is a bit of a trickster. We'll get into him, who got a trickster archetype
yeah,
as well.
because Neil was kind of
Charlie's
a
the one.
trickster.
Charlie's the one. Yeah, Neil definitely. I get. You'll learn with tricksters. There's two to three different kinds of trickster. I've sort of managed to extract three different versions of the trickster. Um, but I would think I would think of Neil as a performer. I mean, he loves the
Yeah,
craft. He loves to perform, and
he's the
he's a
actor.
trickster. Yeah, he's a trickster in the sense that he can change form. He can become Puck. He can become, like all actors do. They're just becoming something. But you've got other kind of tricksters as well that just like to cause mischief and are troublesome. And whereas Neil, I don't think was doing it because he was causing trouble because he was just a troublemaker. I think he lived in a world where he was so stifled that practically anything you did on your own merit was considered to be breaking from the norm and
Yep.
causing, rocking the boat. So I think he
Well,
lived
that
in a
was a
very
giant theme in the movie was conformity.
hmm.
Like it was like they presented the school as just like an oppressive, almost prison-like existence, you know? And
Yeah, it was. Can you imagine going to boarding school and being surrounded by all these old, gruff men, incredibly serious? They don't laugh. They don't sort of cheer. They're all just solemn, and they all go tradition and
yeah. Yeah, like they literally lifted a flag at the beginning of the movie that
yeah,
said on the flag tradition. Like it's
yeah,
like
right in your nose that one. Yeah, tradition, and it had all of the house rules. Can you remember what the house rules were? It was like they all had to like honor,
Oh
obey,
yeah.
respect, those kind of
Well,
things.
my favorite thing was that they all had their own perversion of each of those, like excrement,
That's right.
uh I forget what the bastardized version was. But one thing that was interesting about that, part of the tradition is also the sort of occult tradition as well. Like there's
Mhm.
the school tradition that's so stifling that it almost creates an occult tradition. And that's what those were like almost like secret codes of the
Oh, you
occult
mean a
world.
cult like they like it's very formal and they have rules and regulations and they have it felt like a cultist work when they went into the cave. So these
Exactly.
kids, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely something there. I understand that. Yeah, yeah.
And then there was like a little moment where Keating said excrement. That's what I think of Jay Pritchard,
Yeah.
and it's
Ah,
like,
that's such a brilliant opening.
yeah. And he was sort of saying, like, I know these things. I know these things that you say because I was one of you as well,
Yeah.
I said
I noticed
excrement and
he says in the right in the very beginning, he said, I got through this. So he
yeah.
makes a joke about the being in the school. He was in the school before them about 20 years before. And he makes a little passing joke like, yeah, don't worry, I got through this. As if to say he knows how staid and cold and sterile it is. And I think when he's come back to that college, is it university or a college?
I
Let's say university because
sure.
it feels like level, doesn't it? When he goes back to the university, I think he's kind of made a decision. I'm not going to be one of those teachers. I'm not
Yep.
going to impose myself on them and beat the life out of them. And he's got so much passion. And what did you think of Robin Williams as the casting of that character, Mr. Keating?
That was perfect. Yeah.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. It was absolutely perfect.
I
Uh,
think really I think a lot about this because Robin Williams is my favorite actor. It's not
that's
because I
a
think he's
great
the greatest
pick.
actor in the world. I think Robin Williams is probably one of the most authentic. He's a very authentic human being. You really feel you're seeing he exposes himself. Like different actors to varying degrees have a different craft. So some of them might be able to inhabit a role, and then others of them expose themselves as their emotions, their vulnerabilities, their fears, and they're spontaneous. They just let it flow out of them. So all actors work differently, don't they? And Robin Williams is a very spontaneous person, but he's authentic.
Hmm.
And I think the casting was so perfect because Robin Williams himself is an archetype. He's an
Mm.
idealist. He's a very comedic. He sees meaning in things. He sees humor in things. He's an upbeat guy. I know he battled with, um, was it? It wasn't depression. I think he had bipolar, maybe. I can't remember. But he would be up and down,
Mm.
and there were times in his life he would be very much down. But when he was high, he was just an amazing actor.
That's interesting that you say bipolar because, what with everything there is like a dark side, a shadow side to it. And
Mm,
if you go high, there's always a harsh crash. But it all has to do with like he was just very in touch with his emotions. Like he was just
very much.
very, very in touch. And humans have like the most ecstatic emotions, and we have the most horrible dark emotions as well. And so if
Mm,
you're like if you're going to feel things that as much as Robin Williams feels things, you're gonna get the highs. Like you'll feel high like
Mm.
nobody else, but you'll also feel low like nobody else too. And there's a
Yeah.
downside.
He was so empathic in this film. Do you remember the scene where one of the kids aren't will just doesn't want to tell a poem and he's resisting? It's
Hmm.
I wonder which one that is. It's not Knox.
No,
It's
it's
Ethan Hawke's
Todd.
character, Todd. That's it.
Yeah, Todd.
So Todd's reluctant. He doesn't want to. He just hasn't got the confidence to express himself in front of other people because he's worried about what they'll think about him.
Hmm.
And when Mr. Keating gets him to just spontaneously just erupt with words and ideas and emotions and just lets it spill out,
That was a great scene.
the look on Robin Williams's face as Mr. Keating, it's like he had just suddenly opened up this spring and this water started pouring out. And you can see him looking at it like it was pure empathy. Like he was just immersed in this kid as he was saying it, and you could see him just the way he was holding his hands. He was like touching his heart, like he could really feel it. And I thought, God, Robin Williams. I don't think many people could have played that part as well as him. I think he probably you've seen in your lifetime one of the best people to play one of the best roles. It's when
Yeah.
that happens, it's amazing. So yeah,
Well,
it's
the more I watch movies and the more I make movies, the more I realize so much of it is based on casting. Robin Williams kind of has to be this guy because it's so based on the whole movie hinges on who this guy is. And you can't just get anybody to be that. And like no matter how many notes you take on like um acting classes or how much research you do, you just have to kind of be that person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the casting directors a lot of the time know what they want. They're looking for an archetypal person, somebody's
Hmm.
either very hard and stone-like for a certain part, or they're looking for somebody who is emotionally available and like I said with Robin Williams, maybe very authentic, or they're looking for somebody who is cool, just somebody who's got
Hmm.
cool. And some actors aren't cool. Some actors are just not cool, but they're very funny or they're very intelligent and intense. And
Yeah.
they're looking for what they're looking for, aren't they? So when you get if you know the personality type of the actor, although they don't like the typecasting, but they have to accept sometimes that it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I loved watching Arnold Schwarzenegger as an action hero. I just, as a kid, it was just such a fantastic romp going with him on Total Recall, Predator, and True Lies and all that. He's just an action hero. But when he starts trying comedy and he starts trying drama, it's not it's he's moving out of his persona. He's moving out of his personality type into areas where it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And
Yeah.
they always try, don't they? A lot of these actors try to push out of their personality types into other fields, and some can do it. Some are very versatile, but I
Like
think some
Johnny
people,
Depp. Like Johnny
yeah,
Depp
Johnny
Johnny
Depp.
Depp is a open yeah, he's a but yeah, I think that like that is kind of a lesson for life is, there's two different ways you can go. There's should you first off, you have to know who you are, which is very hard to do. Like it's a very mystical process to actually learn who you are. And I think like a lot of those casting directors, like the good ones, it is an art, like you were saying. Like
It's
they can
definitely,
actually
yeah.
read people, and they can actually read people better than they know who the person is as soon as they walk
Mm.
in, better than they know themselves a lot of
Like
times.
the father of Neil in Dead Poet Society. I recognize him as one of the
Oh
main
yeah.
villains in RoboCop. He's like a
Yeah,
hard.
he's a
He's
villain in
hard.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's as an actor and as a person, when you talk to him, he's quite stony. He's a very stony person. He's hard. He's gruff. I wouldn't say gruff. He's just a hard person, and he always ends up in those roles, and he's perfect for it. He's absolutely perfect for it. Do you remember Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket?
Yeah.
Do you remember the sergeant in that?
Yeah.
Bullshit, boy! I bet you could suck a golf ball through a garden hose. That guy. He always played that character and everything. and
Yeah.
he didn't need to be versatile. He didn't need to act in different ways. All you knew is when you need somebody who's got that hard, militant, commanding, super authoritative attitude, you went for that actor. It was
Well,
like,
yeah, and look at
I want
him.
that guy.
He
Yeah,
made so much hay out of it. He
yeah,
he
he
had a
did. He did.
TV show. He was a millionaire. And whenever somebody whenever there was a question of like, should we need a drill sergeant type, it's like, okay, that
Mm.
guy's the first one that we are gonna
Yeah,
ask, you
yeah.
know? But like that's kind of my question is like once you know yourself, and I think I can anticipate your answer based on what you just said, but once you know yourself, do you try to make yourself more of a full spectrum of a person and do things improve on the things that you're bad at, or do you just go full on who you are and just lean into that and take that as far as you can and go
My
with it?
my brain just went to oh, what's that computer game called? Fallout. You're going to ask me why am I talking about Fallout? You know, have you played the computer game Fallout?
Mm-mm. I know
So,
that it's a post-apocalyptic.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
as you're leveling your character up, you get to choose these different traits, and
Oh,
you can sort of
great!
go,
Great
yeah, you can say,
analogy.
you know, you're going to say, you can either say something like, I want to be multi-skilled in different areas. I don't just want to be really good at, say, imagination. I want to be really good at shooting and charisma, and I want to be really good at making poisons or whatever. So you choose these different traits and spread them out, and you can either spread all over the place and give them like a full synthesized idea of personality types, or you can just focus on one thing.
And what's the more effective thing in the game to do?
I would literally say it completely depends on the situation you're in.
Mm.
It's one of those things. There's not always a right or wrong answer. I think. I just think sometimes it benefits to be hyper focused on one thing and to just become great at it. Like sorry, another analogy is Dungeons and Dragons. If you've got one character really good at fighting, one really good at magic, one really good at healing,
Hmm.
when you all get together, it's more powerful. It's a much more effective team when you do that. Whereas if you were all spread out in different skill sets, it's just not as good. It just doesn't work as well. So there is something to be said about even in the fact that personality types, these archetypes, appear in human culture.
Mm.
It's like they have to. It's like we have to have different people who are good at engineering, people who are really good at nurturing, people who are really good at analyzing and breaking things down. It was like we need these people.
Yeah.
So we have diversity is important. So I think sometimes it is good to be specialized. But other times, if it's not many people and just you, then it may be better to be multi-skilled in different things.
There was another example that I really like. It's a lecture from Richard Feynman. You know who that is? The physicist.
Mhm.
Um,
He was a very charismatic man, wasn't he?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He was like probably one of the best science communicators ever.
Mm,
Like he was explaining quantum mechanics to just amateur people, just regular people, and they got it by the end of the lecture. Like that's how
mm,
good of a science communicator he is. But one of the examples he used about like AI is he said like there was this naval game, war game that was like very highly respected naval war game, and you get people there that are like naval experts and they analyze all the like different like this warship versus this warship and all the attributes of them and whoever picked the best sort of compilation of the army or the navy wins.
mm,
And so one time they tried using like a an AI type of computer to pick the attributes for all the ships and stuff. And the computer just made one single giant warship, super
mm,
ultra powerful warship. And it completely destroyed every other person's like well designed army, you know.
mm.
And then the next year they banned that. They were like, okay, nobody can do the one big warship. And so, but the computer played the next year too. And what he decided, because he couldn't do the one big warship, he did a million tiny warships. And it won again,
Oh
So it's sort
God.
of,
See,
it's,
so different styles. it's just one of those things. I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's
Yeah.
cause and consequence. Wherever it goes. Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made. Like I've got bad memory. I have a very bad memory. Even during this conversation, now and then, I'll probably just say, "What did I just say?" It just disappears. It just goes like a goldfish brain. But I think because my memory is not so good, I think other faculties like my imagination seem to have been elevated. So I'm very good at abstract thinking. I'm very good at pattern recognition and
Yeah.
imagination. But memory just doesn't seem to serve me at all. And reasoning, not so good at reasoning and logic either. Okay, but it just shows you that, I mean, sometimes I think to myself, I do need to improve my memory. So it does help me if I learn a memory trick to try and help me to in I don't know, debates, or when I'm trying to remember, generally remember things.
True. No, you're right. Yeah. It's,
So
but you
so it's
know,
just as and when. But yeah, on the whole, I like leaning into I have ADHD, but I don't see it as a condition. I see it as my superpower. It's like, so this is my traits. I'm very good at this. I'm very good at hyper focusing and imagination, and I've
yeah.
got a lot of energy I can throw into something.
And that's what
Whereas,
makes you special too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then it gives me, areas where my wife has to deal with the fact that I'm just very forgetful and don't know where my keys are, and I have no idea where my wallet is, and I've
Yeah.
lost my card, and she's just pulling her hair out. But yeah.
But is she sort of the opposite of you in those things?
Yeah, in fact,
So
it's a
that's
brilliant
good.
compliment. It's in
Yeah.
fact that's another way. That's going back to the multi-class characters, where it just helps if you get other people who are
Around
stronger where
you.
you're weaker, and yeah, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful synergy when that happens.
Well, what's interesting, bringing it back to the movie slightly, is that that process of finding out, understanding who you are kind of happens throughout the movie because you meet all these kids.
Mm,
And at first, they are all the same. They're dressed the same. They kind of all have the same haircut.
hmm
They all kind of talk the same way. And it's kind of actually a bit repulsive because like there's this very jocular type of talk and stuff, and it's like it doesn't represent who they are at all. They're just talking that way because they think that's how you talk, you know?
mm.
And then throughout the movie, benefiting from Keating's lessons, they all do kind of find out who they are, and they all
That's absolutely
have
going back to
different
what you were saying.
goals and
Yeah,
stuff, and like one of them is just super into girls. You could tell who that
yeah,
guy's gonna be. Like
yeah.
he's just gonna be this happily married dude with a huge family.
Charlie was the one who brought the two girls back, and in the
Yeah.
cave, there's a scene where all these poets are trying to wax lyrical off all these different poems, and one's playing a saxophone, and they're
Yeah.
really letting themselves go. They're really exploring themselves, and they're expressing themselves in ways they've never done before. And then there's this guy just comes in with two girls, and you can see all the other kids going, "What the hell is going on here?" And it's just
Yeah.
it must have been, I mean, back then, to do that must have been quite a big scene, to be bringing these girls into a school where it's an all boys school and not to be any girls there at all. So it's scandalous. But they were, they were breaking free from the system, weren't they? So it was
Yeah. Well, they were transgressing because all of them transgressed the rules to
mm.
become who they are because the rules essentially are there to enforce conformity.
Yeah, to turn you into a model, a mold of all other people. You are to be this mold, to become this
Yeah.
shape and be this way. And then Mr. Keating's going, like you said when he tore out the front page of this poetry book, saying excrement, chuck it, because this person's trying to, I can't remember, Pritchard, whoever it was trying to say that
Yeah.
you can gauge how beautiful a poem is based on how symbolically strong it is and how important it is. And if you put those two
Yeah.
axes against each other,
In
you
a
can determine
graph.
how. Yeah, the whole point was like, I think Mr. Keating says you can't measure poetry, which
Hmm.
is a key part. He's going, you don't analyze this, you don't get rulers out and a protractor and start to, that's not poetry. Poetry is, it's like left brain, right brain. Left brain is all about detail, it's about focus, it's about precision, it's about classifying things, breaking them down, filtering them, and breaking them apart. That you don't dissect a poem. The
Hmm.
poems are for the right brain, and the right brain is creative, it's holistic, it's synergistic, it's seeing the whole, it's grasping everything at once and intuiting it without knowing it. So it's they're working in different ways. So what Mr. Keating was doing, he was trying to say, don't dissect a poem,
Hmm.
become the poem, feel it, embrace it,
Hmm.
embody it. Did you notice when he's getting them to kick the football as he's getting them to read out a poem, and somebody goes, seize the day, and then runs forward and kicks the football. And he says, yes, say it with passion, go for it. And he's actually getting them. It's an actual teaching technique where to get somebody to remember something more powerfully, you don't just get them to mentally remember it, you get them to emotionally feel it, and you also
Hmm.
get them to connect it to an action, and it embodies the knowledge. And I noticed he was a brilliant teacher. I mean, whoever wrote Dead Poets Society, I didn't actually look at the person who wrote it, but they are definitely one of the great screenwriters of Hollywood. They are brilliant. That was a fantastic script.
I think that that's part of what makes filmmaking so mythological as well, is the fact that you are actually experiencing these things that are happening. Like you are actually experiencing and going through these lessons that they're teaching. Whereas
Yeah, yeah,
the J. Pritchard way is just to tell you all the rules and expect you to just follow the rules based on them telling them to you. But
yeah.
watching a movie, you can learn empathy and you can learn great things through experience, through kicking the football, as it were, you know?
Yeah, experiential rather than just mental. It's you
Yeah.
experiencing it. So I found that very interesting. And Mr. Keating, the poet teacher, stands out so much because all the other teachers, as you say, are serious. They're somber. They've got really grumpy faces. They just look like they're really just bored out of their skulls. And then Keating's just a splash of color, isn't he? Everything about him is animated. He's performative. He's passionate. He's full of meaning. Everything has meaning for this guy, and it's
Yeah.
just it's an
But
amazing dynamic.
doesn't that get beat out of you though? Because one of the most interesting speeches in the entire movie for me wasn't from Mr. Keating.
Mhm.
It was from Mr. Nolan, the headmaster, the worst one of all of them.
Mm,
And he picked up the book and he was sort of like telling Mr. Keating, I used to teach this class. Was basically saying like, I was just like you when I first
mm.
started teaching. I was all idealistic and stuff. But I learned that that's just kind of foolish. So you're going to learn that one day, Mr. Keating. And the sooner you recognize that, the better. And you
Mr.
are,
Keating says, I didn't put you down for a cynic," and then the guy goes, "Not a cynic, a realist."
yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're one of them.
But
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
it makes me because and you see the downsides of what Keating does too. He got the kid killed, possibly. You could argue that. Like I'm and
Yeah,
that's what
I actually,
the
yeah,
parent
you bring up a good point there because when I look at the overarching theme of the film, it seems that, as you said, it's conformity versus self-expression. Mr. Keating is trying to teach these kids how to find out who they are, to embrace it, and to be bold about it, and not to try and hide themselves, but to become themselves.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and and he's fostering and cultivating their inner calling. Have you ever? You must have heard of Joseph Campbell saying, "Follow your bliss." You
I
ever heard that
haven't
one?
heard that actually. Yeah.
So Joseph Campbell, one of his main teachings is follow your bliss, the thing that you're passionate about, that you love and adore, and you can't stop thinking about, and it means so much to you. He says, as long as you follow that, you're always going to be happy, even if it doesn't lead to money or wealth or fame. Just the act of following your bliss will bring you great personal growth. And so there's this sense that you think, Mr. Keating, you think that the lesson of self-expression is perfect. You think, well, there can be nothing wrong with this. It must be this has to be the message of the film, that you have to be expressive. You have to become a passionate and devoted version of yourself. But as you see in the film, if you don't conform, if you're constantly expressing yourself in wild ways, it can get quite chaotic. And there does get
Yeah.
moments of chaos. Um, and there's one boy in particular, he kisses a girl while she's sleeping, which is incredibly,
Yeah.
like, it's a violation in many ways. And he was seizing the day. But you could see there was an
You're
area
right.
where you're like, you're crossing boundaries here. So self-expression can there is a consequence if it's dialed up too much, which happens in this film. Obviously, when sadly we'll get to the bit later where Neil commits suicide, because he's stifled by the conformity, but he pushed so hard into the self-expression, and he was so bold and so brazen about it. He was lying by using his father's signature to get him
Yeah.
into this acting school.
Which is a very
So
Puck thing to do also,
very much, yeah, life
right?
imitates art, isn't it? Life imitates art. But it ultimately, yeah, I think there's always a balance. Have you ever heard of a screenwriting book called Dramatica?
Mm-mm. Oh,
I highly recommend it. I
okay.
don't think it's for everybody, but it talks about the story argument, and it says when you're telling a story argument, which is basically that what are you trying to say in this film? What is the main message you're trying to convey to your audience? And when you're thinking about it, it says don't just try and say I am right, and the angle I'm going to tell you from my point of view, and then when we get to the end of the film, I will make sure you know the virtuous proper ending of how this film should end. A good writer understands that there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. There's just these gradients in between, and you can dial something up or you can dial it down. So in this film, here's a good example for you. In this
Yeah.
film, it's conformity versus self-expression, with the bias towards the arguments. Basically self-expression is so important. We shouldn't stifle and suffocate it out of young people. We should do everything we can to stoke it.
Hmm.
But in this film, that there are moments where you see the conformists and the governors, the people trying to regulate and control everything. It has gone too far. It does get carried away. They are breaking trust in their parents and so on. And so there's a collapse. But there's another film. See if I can remember it. Whiplash. Have you seen Whiplash?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that
Now
very similar, yeah.
that's like the role reversal, though. Because in this one, the teacher is trying to get you to conform. You have to play exactly like this. Don't play like anybody else. You have to, and he teaches you've got to be a certain way. And he's not trying to the guy who's the teacher in Whiplash. He's trying to teach these kids the drums, and he's not trying to teach this one kid how to express yourself.
Hmm.
He's trying to get him to conform, to be so exactly like the greats. You have to be the greats. You can't be yourself. Be like the greats.
Hmm.
And I thought, when I was watching that, I thought, well, the message clearly in this film is going to be bad. It's going to be that you're going to end up killing this kid. You're going to break him. You're going to destroy his spirit. And I was wrong, because at the end of the film, the kid literally turns into a master. He
Hmm.
was burnt. The teacher was so controlling, and so it was like he was a fire, and he burnt and burnt and burnt that kid like a metal until this strong yielding metal came out. And he was just, the performance he gives at the end is absolutely breathtaking, and he's just in the zone. And it's like that's an example where conformity, or rather a teacher who, rather than being a cultivator, is more of an enforcer. He's not trying to cultivate, he's trying to force you into this
Yeah.
shape to become exactly like this. And he achieves it. And at the end of the
That's true.
film, you
It
think,
it is the opposite. Yeah.
yeah,
And the thing about that teacher too in that movie, that would be a good movie to review actually.
yeah,
But
I'm totally up for that one.
yeah, it would be cool. Yeah, maybe it could be like a continual theme of this conformity idea because I think that, Dead Poet Society doesn't really it's cover it all. Like there's other perspectives to see it from. Yeah, in Whiplash, the funny thing is like the teacher in that movie was such a dick.
Oh, he was just a beast, wasn't he? He was a monster.
And then the whole question that you have the whole time, and the brilliance of that movie is you never know, even by the end, if he actually is a dick or if it was all just a play,
That's an
an
interesting point.
act,
I never
so
thought of
that
that.
Miles Teller could be as good as he could possibly be.
I think he was a dick, but I think it takes a dick to make. When we say a dick, I think he is a ruthless, determined, no nonsense, give everything. I don't want any weakness. I don't want any crying. I don't want any excuses. You have to hit the notes. You have to hit the speed, the tempo. You have to have the passion. And so he's unrelenting. He's unforgiving.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that would create something at the end of anything of value. You'd think it would destroy somebody, but he comes through stronger. It's like a
Well, and
Spartan.
it does destroy people
It
in the
does,
movie.
but it's. I guess what it says is, if for those who can stand the heat of the kitchen,
Hmm.
for those who can stand it, there's some people they can take that fire, they can take that burn. When you work in film and TV, I don't know. I think it's probably very similar to Britain. It's quite. It was actually built upon the military. So the military,
Yeah.
when people came out of World War II, they were engineers and they were sort of knew how to work as a team, and they developed the craft of film and TV, and they used the technology from World War II to create the cameras and the grip kit that we work with. And it's quite hard, isn't it? It can be quite difficult being a grip. You can get shout if you've got the wrong film crew. You can be shouted at. It's high discipline. The expectations are high. Any mistake you make can cost thousands of pounds. The pressure is on, and some people can't take it. It's too much. I used to see
Yeah.
people coming into film and TV, and they'd go. They were like, I can't cope with this much pressure. That if I make one mistake, it cost the production hundreds of pounds.
Well, yeah, and
And
like at first you have like in LA, you have to work for free. You have to prove
yes,
yourself and
yeah.
go through that. I don't know if you had to go through that whole thing too, but
I think I worked for free for about a year, and then eventually
yep,
I got onto a
same
paid
here.
gig. Yeah,
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 and it's like so few people are down for that,
yeah.
like
So you
that
see
want
what I
just a
mean?
regular job.
Yeah, which shows you that the teacher, like, it's different archetypes. So there are different teachers. So the guy in Whiplash, he is a governor, and the governor is somebody who's all about control, regulation. You have to meet certain standards. You have to be able to stop doing the things you like and only do the things you don't like to make yourself good at something. So you've got to be committed and disciplined. And Mr. Keating's a cultivator. He's a gardener. He's like, I will grow you by pouring water on you and gently inspiring you. Both worked for, but for different people.
Yeah,
Generally speaking, I
exactly.
think most people would prefer a Mr. Keating over a
Well,
Whiplash
yeah, but
guy.
I think that I think Mr. Keating was naive. I think he was
Yes.
too naive. He didn't really
Yeah.
understand what kind of Pandora's box he was opening.
Mhm.
Whereas the teacher in Whiplash knew exactly what was knew exactly what he was doing. He wasn't
Mm,
naive
mm.
at all. He was like, if you want somebody to be good, you got to be tough on him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And life is that way, and that's what I'm going to instill in the kids. I think Mr. Keating sort of, by the end of the movie, like his whole thing was seize the day and suck the marrow out of life. He said that to
Hmm.
them. And then by the end of it, he sort of amended it. Do you remember that? Where he goes,
Go on, tell me.
suck the marrow out of life, but don't choke on the bone, you know?
Right. Okay.
So he sort of it was great though, because why I think Mr. Keating is kind of a more interesting character is he does learn along the way. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he
That's
kind
a good
of
that's a
learns
good point
lessons.
about the story. This Dramatica book I was telling you about.
Hmm.
They talk about um the story argument means that different characters are archetypes, and each character gives you a certain perspective into the story. So is it Yojimbo? There's a famous film by Kurosawa where he's got different characters talking about a crime that was
Oh yeah,
committed.
Roshi or Rosh Rashomon.
Rashomon, yeah,
Yeah.
Rashomon, you've got it. And during Rashomon, it blew my mind when I first saw it because there was like four different stories from four different perspectives, and they were all telling the same story, but the story was just inflected in different ways. That it was like, he didn't say that before, but now he said it this time, and he thought, all right, so that's how he sees it, and that's how she sees it, and you realize that these different perspectives are changing the whole reality of the situation, so that the way people experience it is so different. You go,
Well,
flipping it,
yeah.
is that how reality works? People are seeing it, experience, reality so differently to each other.
Well, that I
And
think. Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
no, no, go on.
I think that as an artist, I have come to the realization that I think perspective will be the defining feature of the 21st century. I
Mm.
think movies will all be told. That's the only way to tell new stories now, is to tell it from a different perspective. Not just tell the story in your own way, but to tell the story from a different character's
Yeah.
perspective. You know
And
what I
to
mean?
inhabit, and if you inhabit that character properly and you don't bring yourself to it and you try to remove your own ego and self identity as much as you can, so you really inhabit that character,
Hmm.
you truly start to see the world through different eyes. And when you're a really good writer, you can actually inhabit those both those mindsets, and
Hmm.
you step back, and you have it's like you have no judgment, no bias. You're just aware. You just try to be aware of what it's like to be these people. And that state of just being aware of what it's like to be those people allows you to truly understand where they're coming from. And then to, if you were writing a story about this in the future, it's like when I used to see bullies, if you see a bully in a really rubbish TV show, they're always just mean, stupid, cruel, and there doesn't seem to be much more going there. I mean, example, Back to the Future, Biff. He's just a
Hmm.
bully. He's just a dickhead. He's just a jerk. And there's nothing more to him than that. He's just a horrible person through and through. But in a really good film, when you really get time to explore the characters, um, you suddenly go, oh, the bully. You can reveal that the bully was beaten by his father, and you can reveal that his mother humiliated him, and then you suddenly realize this bully is he's continuing a pattern that
Hmm.
his own parents may have gone through, and you see more depth to the character.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you start feeling sorry for them. You're like, oh my god, I really feel sorry for this. This what I thought was a villain, but now it turns out to be somebody more complicated.
I think like a lot of we say the word ignorance, but I think it's true. Like people are just so influenced by everyone around them and they don't really even know that they're being so hateful, you know?
Mm.
And because like an example of I actually want to hear your experience on this too, but I want to know what high school Simon was like. But in my high school experience, I did get bullied. And it was for basically no reason other than well, I kind of was a independent I was independent thinker even then. Like I looked at people wearing goth outfits and I'm like, what made them a goth? Like were they born that
Yeah,
way? Were they
yeah.
born destined to be a goth or did they just kind of
It goes back to
choose this
personality types, and you,
personality like putting
yeah.
on clothes, and like, I don't even think they know what they were doing. I don't think anyone in high school knows what they're doing, so they just kind of follow a sort of guideline of
I
personality
think
traits,
I
you
think
know?
there's a little bit more to it than that. I do think because I've shown you before this personality chart I'm creating.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
trying to
before
map
we
the mind out.
get to that, though, I just want to finish this. It's kind of
Yeah, go
funny,
for it.
but there was this one guy who was bullying me. And I didn't understand why he was bullying me. I don't think he understood why he was bullying me. He just sort of like cornered me in the hall and pushed me down or like threw me into a dirty clothes thing in the gym.
Mhm.
And I was just like, this guy just is inhabiting this part. And he doesn't really understand what he's doing. He's just sort of expediently playing this character,
Yeah, he's playing a
you
role,
know?
isn't he?
It made me not so mad with him. It made me sort of understand what was going on, and then I could just kind of laugh it off. I still didn't like
Okay.
it, but but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think everybody's born with certain traits. Just roll the dice, from whoever your family were and your parents were, and the genes you've inherited and the way you were brought up. You you have a certain set of traits. And when you go to school, I've noticed that some people seem to be stress heads. They just get stressed out at the drop of a hat. Other people, just going back to these goths, they just seem to carry sadness in them, and they just seem to be not depressed, not grief stricken. They just are slow, and they when they talk, they're kind of like got a Daria sound of voice, and they're really kind of like sad. Then you got people like me who are just a bit upbeat, zany, just bit passionate and not exactly. I personally don't feel sad or stressed very often. It's probably rare for me to experience that. I get angry sometimes, a bit passionate, a bit of anger going on, but not nothing special. But I seem to sit in the sort of at the happy area. But other people I know, my friends, they just seem to be serious. They're serious people, and they don't seem to have that lighter side. But it's just this, it's just who they are. And I just think when you're in school, when you start meeting other people and you're both like you sad types and you've just got a sort of melancholy to you, and you gravitate to those people, and the next thing you know, you're like, man, I just want to paint my face white. I just feel black and white. Like, think it's just easier. I just want to paint my face white and put some like just dye my hair black and grow it long. And then you get your goths and your emos and
Yeah.
jocks. You know, they're usually angry. A lot of football people and stuff I know are just angry people and get to fights really quickly and spark to anger really quick. So again, it's almost like there's an archetype there in culture all over the place. I was the misfit. I was one of the misfits. So yeah,
Nice.
I got bullied a little bit as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Right,
I could see that.
go back to the Poet Society. Whilst
Yeah.
we're in school, I was going to take you to an interesting scene. See what you thought about it.
Mm,
Uh, what was the one? It's a couple that I really liked. I always enjoyed going between the class and the cave, the class and the cave. So that for those who haven't seen Dead Poet Society, there's a cave these kids go to do, as you said, a cult like ceremonies and
yeah.
rituals and dancing and singing. And then in the school, they would be with Mr. Keating, and he'd be always teaching them something amazing. Or he's
Mm,
constantly inspiring them. And I noticed he was always making it about let's get outside, let's not be in the
yeah.
class. Did you notice that they were like kicking balls and walking, marching
They were
around the
doing the
yard?
funny walks. Yeah.
Yeah, finding out who
That was
you are.
great. Yeah.
I think so. Like I said, I do think the film was overall trying to say, don't stifle self-expression. Let it grow, nurture it. But it's also suggesting that there is, we do live in a world with boundaries, and we do live
Yes.
in a world with rules and regulations, and it doesn't mean you should be able to break them and do what you want. And you still have to try and stay within the confines of a place that there's conformity and self-expression. Is there any other parts of the film
Well,
that
there
you in
was
particular could talk about?
there was that one scene you were talking about that I had more to say on, which is when like actually we could just talk about the character of Todd because he's played by Ethan Hawke,
Mm.
but he actually is not given that much screen time.
Hmm.
And but his character I thought was extremely interesting because he was voiceless. He was actually mute. He was literally
He was a
voiceless.
mouse, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think Mr. Keatings refers to him as a mole. He wants
Yeah.
to. It's like you want to be underground and hide away, and he turns the lights off on him and leaves them in the dark, as if to
Yeah.
say, "You're just a mole, and
And
come out of your shell."
he seemed to be though Keating's ultimate project. He seemed to be the one
Yes.
that Keating was the most interested in
Hmm. Hmm.
because he also had a brother that he was living up to.
That's right. Yeah.
And that kind of causes and his brother everyone ever the first thing anyone ever said to him was, "Oh, you're this guy's brother." So he had no identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was just like his brother's brother.
Yeah.
Um,
When you're known by proxy to somebody else, oh, you're the cool person's brother, and all of a sudden the brother is the cool one, and you're just the who are you?
yeah,
And so, yeah, he Keating definitely had a brilliant work on him when he got him to stop thinking because
yeah,
his thoughts were stopping him from expressing himself. So he says, "Don't listen to the group laughing. Just say whatever comes out of your mind. Anything. Just
yeah.
say something about Walt Whitman." He shows a picture of Walt Whitman in the corner with a big bushy, straggly beard, and he just starts letting the words flow, and some of the kids laugh a bit, and Mr. Keating's like, don't listen, just keep going. And as it starts coming out, it's almost like he's a sculptor, and he's just sculpting this
Yeah,
personality, and he just sits back and let it sculpt itself. And the words start pouring out of what's his name, Todd. just
Yeah.
pouring out of him, and this language gets really creative, and he starts describing this wizened tooth madman and about the
Yeah.
suffocation of a sheet, and it was brilliant. Do you know what was mad about it? It felt real.
Hmm.
Somebody'd written that scene, and I watched that. I thought that just feels real. It was spontaneous. Everything that was being done. That's why it was hard to imagine it being written down, because everything about it was about the boy being spontaneous. Let go, just whatever
Yeah.
comes out of your head. Then he closes his eyes and says, "Now don't even look around. Just close your eyes. Just let it flow out of you."
Yeah.
And you suddenly saw this. He sits down and he goes, "There is a poet in you. I can see it now. You have a
Hmm.
poet in you."
Well, it was great too
Um,
that the image of Walt Whitman, like Walt Whitman just looks like he looks like an insane person. Like
yeah.
with his crazy beard and everything like that. Like so
Have
it was
you
a great
read much of Walt
idol.
Whitman's work?
Yeah, I in the current context of poetry nowadays, I don't really like him that much because
Mhm.
I actually I've actually become more of a Jay Pritchard type when it comes to poetry because I feel like, we've gone a little bit too far over the past like maybe 60 years in poetry
Mhm.
of just say whatever you feel, man. Like there's no
Ah.
rules, man. And it's like then I read stuff like the Romantics and Percy Shelley and stuff, and those guys understood the mechanics of poetry and stuff, and they are just absolutely impressive. There's like somebody had a quote which is like they asked this like Robert Frost type poet. I don't think it was Robert Frost. Like, why don't you do free verse poetry? And he goes, well, of course I could, but why waste the talent? You know? And so I always like that because there is a certain like you do need some kind of metric for what is a good poem, what is a bad poem, or else poetry as a art will languish, and it has. At the time, Walt Whitman was reacting to everything was the same. Everything was iambic pentameter and in couplet rhymes. Like literally everything you would read was that way. And so
Okay.
he what he was doing was he was trying to break us free of that, and he
Mhm.
succeeded. But I think I view Walt Whitman more as a reaction than like a poetic idol.
Have you ever? It's a bit of a sort of sideways question.
Sure.
With mythology, what do you think the difference is between an epic poem and a regular, beautiful, well-written poem? So, obviously, we refer to epic poetry as the myths, where
Yeah.
they're waxing lyrical with big themes and big personifications and the like. Um, what do you think the difference is between a
All right.
myth and an epic poem? An epic poem, let's call it
Yeah.
a myth, epic poem, and a regular poem. What do you think makes it stand out?
Well, I think you answered your own question there. Yeah. I think it is that myth making um aspect to it. And the fact that it's telling a story. Like epic poems are always telling a story, whereas we don't really have an expectation for a just like like a romantic poem to tell a story.
So have you read? Because I asked ChatGPT this a couple of weeks ago. I was thinking about epic poems. I always associate with the Iliad,
Hmm.
um, possibly Dante's Inferno. These epic pieces of work. Um, and I was thinking to myself, does has anybody written a poem today, an epic poem, not
Oh,
not under the
I thought the
title
same
myth?
thing.
Yeah, not under the word, not that they would say, "Oh, I've written a myth," but poetry that's so epic, so beautifully crafted, and so eloquently put together, and so meta. There's so many different layers of meaning in it, just like a myth that we would refer to them as a modern epic, a modern poetic epic. And it gave a couple. It gave Les Miserables, Love and War, Finnegan's Wake.
Okay, yeah, that I would consider that, yeah, in a weird
Yeah,
way. And
yeah.
Ulysses, I think
Yeah,
Ulysses
Ulysses.
was clearly attempting to, I guess, take that baton that because you do see like a very clear, through line of from the Iliad and Odyssey to something like the Aeneid, to something like Dante's Inferno,
Mm.
and then Dante's Inferno to something like Paradise Lost, where it's sort of like taking up this. So like Paradise Lost has characters, mythological characters in it that is contained, but you can see, and in Dante's Inferno had like Odysseus and Virgil is actually in it, you know? And so
Mm, mm,
they're
mm,
carrying the tradition along, but updating it. And over time, the Odyssey, when the Odyssey was written, there was no such thing as Christianity. And now that same tradition is carried on. That same mythological tradition is carried on in Paradise Lost, but it's a Christian story. And sort
mm,
of the middle ground from that is Dante's Inferno. Dante's
mm.
Inferno is like the total mix of Christianity and mythology.
Yeah,
And that's
definitely.
why many people consider it like the greatest work of the Western canon, you know.
Mm, mm.
And then you go from Paradise Lost to something like Ulysses, which is just the way that modern people see that myth, which is just a bunch of people walking around Dublin, just hanging
Mm.
out and basically doing nothing, which is a comment on the sort of the modern world and stuff. So I do actually consider Ulysses the last in that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. It's just an interesting idea because I never thought about. I was like, oh, another one is who is this guy's name now? Okay, it'll come to me. Begins with W. The guy who wrote Tiger, Tiger, Burning Bright.
Oh yeah, William.
Words. No, I've got the wrong.
No,
I think
William Blake.
William Blake. You got it.
Yeah.
Ah,
Oh yeah,
I.
and he did attempt. He did attempt to do it
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
catch on, but like just the his little poems, those were made for children. The Tiger Tiger
yeah, yeah.
ones. And they were the first things he ever made. The rest of his life was based on he just created entire mythology.
He literally did. I think this guy needs to be brought back to the front again in mythology because I think people need
Let's
to
do
study
it.
William Blake.
That would be an
William,
incredible project to do.
I'd be well up for that. William
Yeah.
Blake, and what I didn't realize is he had personified parts of the mind in the way I had, and I haven't even read his works in that way to
Oh,
know he'd
that's
done that.
right.
But when I was
Yeah.
reading some of his works recently, I was like, Jesus Christ, I've done this. So he must have had the same instincts, which
Hmm.
is that if you think about it, when you study mythology and psychology, Freud and Jung, and even Joseph Campbell, I know he's not a psychologist, but he is a mythologist and he understands, the mind through Freud and Jung because they were friends. They understood that the myths were trying to tell us about these we were personifying, stars, planets, the sun, mountains, birds, weather systems. We were personifying them and saying this is like certain people we know. The weather is behaving in a way that certain women do right now, or the birds are flocking together in the way our tribe does. Whatever it is, they
Yeah.
were seeing these patterns, and they were seeing something they genuinely understood of their own mind that they could see reflected in the animal kingdom or the
Well,
meteorological
yeah, and then
kingdom.
like with astrology, I'm trying to learn about astrology, and it what's very interesting is the entire concept of astrology is whatever is happening in the heavens is affects you on Earth,
Mm,
not in a physical way, although some of them do argue that, but in a spiritual way, because the
mm,
heavens are a realm of spirituality. And actually, I consider poetry the language of spirituality. So a poem that isn't about something spiritual or metaphorical, I don't consider it a poem,
mm,
even if it has all the other aspects. If that's a key aspect to it. But like you look at things like the way that they name the planets, like Mars is red and it's warlike and stuff and so there's the planet that acts in this crazy way, and then there's the god Mars, and then there's sort of like the attributes of people that were born with Mars doing certain things, they're more aggressive, so it
Mm.
all sort of in their mind, all these things sort of that we separate, they all connect
Yes.
together. Yeah.
Again, they're connecting domains most people wouldn't connect. It's funny
Yeah.
when you see scientists and the like poo-pooing astrology,
Hmm.
and I don't think they've even attempted to try and understand it. I think they just look at the surface of it and go, "This is a load of rubbish."
Yeah.
There's a guy who wrote he's a famous you'll know him. Here we go. A sec. And these are my Greek mythology
Oh,
book.
Robert Graves.
Robert Greaves, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
absolutely love him. He's such
his
an
his grand sorry, not
inspiration.
his grandson, but his some I think his grandson's cousin or something. Somebody's related lives up the road from me and
No way.
they reached out to me and they are astrologers. And I said, "That's interesting. You got into astrology." I said, "Because obviously, that member of your family was Robert Greaves was a mythologist. So you isn't it interesting that you're both working with archetypes?" And he said, "Yeah." He says it's in our family. We are just all fascinated by symbols, myths, archetypal features, and so on. So I'd like to do a podcast with him one day.
Oh, I would listen to that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
So
Yeah,
I'm interested in it, but
he
go on.
sorry. Yeah, well, he said something like I was like watching all the like the paucity of a video that exists of him, and one of the things that he said was we're about to enter a world of magic.
Mm, God, he
And that's
wasn't wrong.
always intrigued me because it's like, what the heck is he talking about? You
Mm.
know, what does he mean by that? We're about to enter
I
a
wonder
world
if
of
he was
magic.
touching upon the guy who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey,
As
directed
not
by
Asimov.
no, it wasn't Asimov. Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah.
So Arthur C. Clarke said, in the future, the technology will be so mind bending, it will be so incredible that we will not be
Mm.
able to distinguish it from magic today. He says it'll just be it will be like magic to us. That's where we are now. I mean, that AI, for instance, is so magical. It's so easy to forget how incredible it is that we have this power at our fingertips,
Yeah.
this knowledge machine, and it's like the Babel Tower or the fish the Babel. I think I'm mixing Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy with the Tower of Babel. But the idea that the Tower of Babel means that all people can communicate and that there's no we're all speaking the same language, we're all connected, and it just feels like that was magical at the time. It was
Yeah.
mythical but magical. And it feels like we've got it now. We've got our own
Well, me
Babel
and my
Tower.
brother are watching the Avatar movies.
Mm.
And the thing that we're talking about, let me know what you think of this, is the realm of the Avatar. Did you see those movies?
I've done one and two. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Um, so
third one's not out yet, is it?
sorry.
The third one's not out yet, is it?
Yeah, it's just about to come out, yeah. But that world and the avatar itself, because the main character had to become an avatar to really be a part of that world. And
Mm.
it's a world where like everyone's interconnected, everything is interconnected. The world itself kind of has a mind and you can access it. And it kind of reminds me of the internet. It's a world of magic,
Mm. Mm.
So it's sort of a metaphor. It's kind of telling you we live in magical times right now. We live in a mythology. Understand that. I think um that's kind of what Robert Graves was getting at, is like where the way that we used to live, it's too linear. It's too linear of a way to live. When you lived in a linear way, you could kind of understand A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D,
Mm.
and you can kind of see the path ahead of you, and it makes sense. But we don't live that. That's starting to crumble, and we're starting to have to change the way that our minds work to it
Mm.
more so less following a path and more just jumping into a pool of water. and just being and just swimming, and not knowing where you're going, but just sort of like, so if you don't know where to go, you sort of have to figure it out and follow your intuition to get places, and like the world is just going to be way too big for us to handle, and we'll either go crazy or we'll learn to use our intuition. That's why I think it's so important to like break people out of this linear way of thinking, not because it's how I think that people should be, but that's just the way that the world is going to be now, you know.
Mm.
And if you don't start thinking in this mythological way that's sort of intuitive as opposed to analytical, you're going to get left behind. You're not going
This,
to understand the
yeah,
world that you're in.
I would go as far as saying this is the most significant time possibly in our local universe right now, happening right
Yeah,
now. Because I've said to you before, haven't I? Imagine being the first. Imagine if I could take you backwards in time to any time in history, and I said I'm going to show you some significant moments that most people don't necessarily think about in a significant way. But I'm going to take you back to the first single cell that emerged in the ocean, say 2.5 billion years ago or 3 billion years ago. And I'm going to say, I'll shrink you down to the size of a cell, right? And you won't see anything. It's just water. And I'll say, keep your eye on that spot there now. Don't take your eye off it. And all of a sudden, pop, a little tiny cell appears. And before that moment, you've got to remember now, before that moment, there was no cells on the entire planet. There was just protein.
yeah,
And then these proteins, some kind of chemical reaction, some kind of maybe conscious entity or something was going along with this that it just formed into a bloody cell, right? And once you got that cell, that to be there at that moment, it would be 1 in 13 billion chance to be there, and
yeah.
we obviously didn't get to see it. The next one was the first ever organism. So billions of years later, these little single cellular organisms start to work together and form little multiples. They become multicellular, so they're working together as a group. But one day they develop organs like the liver, the heart, the arteries, and then they develop a tiny little ganglion called a brain. And
Oh,
it's like a million times bigger
yeah.
than the cell itself.
What's
And
the
they
point
say
of
to
that?
themselves, yeah, they say to themselves, why don't we just turn this thing on and just like let it run the show? And the other
Hmm.
cells are like, I don't know, is that a bad idea? It's like, no, let's just see what happens. So they turn it on, and this suddenly this little tiny fish-like creature comes to life. It was so small. The first organism was like so small. I mean, you can't. I'm putting my fingers together to be the size of a pinhead, but it was an organism. It had organs, and it was far greater the size of a cell. So if I was to show you the first time that appeared, it literally just unfolds as the cells start to uh, what's the word, multiply,
Hmm.
and eventually it multiplies into this organism. And to show you that, say that this is the first time a worm woke up and just became self-aware and conscious of its own experience. And again, to be there is 1 in a couple of billion chance. Well, the next big moment in history was when humans started to think in abstract ways,
Yeah.
because once we broke from the instinctual brain and we got into this cognitive realm where we realized we could use our imagination, we could think in patterns, we could logically deduct something through inference, we could have memories, and we can recall and reflect on things. We literally just unzipped the whole brain and expanded it out and
Yeah.
suddenly created language created art and culture creates civilization creates globalization. Now we're about to see something super significant. We're about to see artificial intelligence possibly in this century become an intelligent sentient being with a presence, with possibly emotions and cognition and self awareness. And if that happens, it's like seeing the first cell or the first organism
Hmm.
or the first human, like in Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, the first human when it figures out that a bone doesn't just have to be a bone, it can also be a club.
Yeah.
And then that turns into a
Well,
spaceship.
the interesting thing about the artificial intelligence is it really is no different than, the conception of the internet in Pandora, right? In the Avatar movie, but it's completely created by us.
Yeah, yeah,
And it like they call it the singularity because the singularity is something that it becomes unpredictable. Like the calculator zeroes out, and it's like I don't know what I'm dealing with here. That and then
yeah.
you
I
can't.
like that, the calculator zeroes out. But that's what the religious sort of people were saying, is that when there's a coming, when this some being will return. So like the Aztecs say that the feathered serpent will one day return, and we hear that Jesus will return. We hear that and the Jews, I think, have another a Messiah will come.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah,
all
what
these
is that?
ideas.
I've always wondered what that represented. Yeah, why do we
Well,
need a messiah? Like someone, sorry to this is actually something that you sparked in me was what I think these end times apocalypse things are talking about really is the fact that we had a way of being that worked for a while and now it no longer works. The world has changed. And it's sort of like when you're driving and you drive in one gear and you get to the end of the gear, but it only takes you 20 miles an hour. And so you need to pop to the next gear, right? And that is, in human terms, an extremely turbulent, violent process.
Mm,
Like when you're old, because the old age has to die, it has to end for a new age to begin. And it's sort of growing pains because if the new age doesn't begin, then our culture is going to decay. And you have all these people comfortable in the old way, and they're actually more scared of the new way arriving than the old way
mm,
decaying. And it's sort of like a snake too. Like a snake will die if it doesn't shed its skin. It needs to shed its skin, or else it becomes trapped by its own old
mm.
shell, you know? I don't think that they're apocalypse. I think the wrong way to look at it is as an apocalypse where nothing is on the other end, but in a sort of like a transformation, you know?
Transcendental. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, if atoms assemble themselves into a cell, that's transformational. If cells transform themselves into an organism, that's transcendental. That's transformative. And if humans transcend their instinctual selves and become self-aware, and then from that civilization suddenly appears, that's
Yeah.
transcendental. So and if you think, here's another interesting thing, but the distance between the first atom and the first cell was, I think, about 7 or 8 billion years. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Between the single cell and the multi-cell, I think it was 2 billion years. Between the organism and the human was millions of years, and then human to AI,
Yeah.
thousands. So you can see
Yeah.
that again, that that line is accelerating and flattening, and it's like, well, what are we heading towards? And as you say, in religion and in mythology, it says, it doesn't always say the end. It says transformational
Yeah.
time, a
Yeah.
transcendental time. Either it can mean, completely the end, but even Ragnarok ends with some of the older gods returning, and new gods sort of rising to the occasion to form the new king lines and so on. We need to just re-enchant the world with meaning
Yeah.
and myth. That's why I'm doing a myth, because I'm hoping that if you can ground people back in something sacred and something personal to them, and that for me is consciousness, and you can help them to understand the nature of mind and consciousness and archetypes, and they start to see that they are a part of a certain personality type. So say now you are an empath and truly feel other people's feelings, you are compassionate, you are attentive to people's needs. There's loads of people like that out there. Maybe 10% of the entire world is full of people who have a strong empathy. And when you realize that that is in animals as well, animals have empathy. And even plants, you can see some plants show they tend to nurture other plants more than others. So they selectively nurture and guide and cultivate other plants as if they're loving it, as if it's something important to them. So when you realize that these personality types are not just in humans, they're in animals, they're in plants. Why not go further? Why not say
Yeah.
they're in stars and they're in planets and they're in cells and atoms? Why not say that everything is vital, everything is conscious and alive,
Yeah.
and just try to find what that means?
Well,
Why
and that's
why are
something
there
that really
archetypes?
does connect everybody. Like a
Mm.
Chinese person on the other side of the world is just as conscious as you are, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. And
Like
if you
they're
and it's one thing. It's all subjective as well. That's the interesting thing about mind is it's a subjective thing, and it's something we all experience, but we can't explain how it works.
hmm
I don't know how your consciousness works. You don't know how my consciousness works, but we're having the same experience. So yeah, Mr. Keating, sort of, I'm gonna have to sort of slowly wind down to an end because I'm getting tired now. It's 11 o'clock over here.
Sorry,
But
yeah.
I do believe that this Dead Poet Society. The reason I love this film is because it's uh, it's full of meaning, and he's trying to impassion people again to find out who they are, who your archetype is, what's your personality type. Find that, embrace it, become it. Don't get caught up in a world where you're just a number, just a cog in the machine. Express yourself, be confident, and what does he say? Carpe diem, seize the day.
hmm
So yeah, we need to get seasoned. We need to get seasoned because we're right now. The world is. It feels like we're just letting go of it, and it's just
Well, yeah.
dissolving. There's a gulf of meaninglessness where people just don't know. There's a lack of trust.
Yeah.
It really does feel like we're in a movie. It feels so biblical. It's such a crazy time to be alive. But I would say that if we could re-enchant people and get them back to a sense that they belong, that they are valuable, that they have a part to play, that there's something big coming and it's going to transform our lives, and that we have to align with it.
Yeah.
And before we can align with that, we need to align with each other, because there's no how can we expect AI to align with us and us with them if we can't even align with ourselves?
Yeah.
So I would finish by saying that we definitely need to find our passions again. We need to find our identity, and we need to find our national identity and our united global identity, just like
Yeah.
Keating's trying to get everybody to find their personal identity. And do we need to conform? Do
Well,
we need?
let me bring it back to the movie. Because first of all, one of the things I'm thinking is finding who you are is fraught with so many issues. It's fraught with so many problems. You find things in your shadow that you're very uncomfortable with. So it's very easy to, and then what do you gain? How much money do you get for knowing who you are? Zero.
Mm, mm,
And for that, you're given a lot of strife. One of the metaphors I like the most was when they go into the cave. And when they go into the cave, at first, it's very clear that the cave has always been there and it's always been used for this purpose.
mm,
Back
mm.
to the time of Thoreau, like they even make reference to Thoreau was in this cave, and that's kind of
No
what
way. I missed that bit. That's
yeah,
amazing.
and that's kind of what poetry is too. It's it's a connection to the past. It's a way to talk to these people that have been there before. They've been in this school, they've been in this cave. They were going through all these things that you were going through. And so to go into that cave is to just be in this very sacred place and connects you with all these other people, these giants. And Keating was probably in that cave, So,
Yeah, definitely. He was definitely in that cave.
and then when they get to the cave to start with, they try to start a fire,
Mm,
but they just sort of quickly give up because everything's wet. And the second time they're in the cave, like somebody's smoking a cigarette, so the flame is sort of beginning a little bit. And then the next time they're in there, they had this little fire going, and then by the last time that we're there, the fire is booming and it's like this big
yeah,
giant
yeah.
fire that's and so it's like that fire of the past, that little spark of the past, of the glory of that original source, that primal caveman
Mm.
source, what became cultivated. They found it mystically through poetry, and they cultivated it, and they it became this big booming thing.
Mm.
And that's kind of a metaphor, I would say, for what you're doing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what I'm doing half the time. It's crazy. I've got I've got some stuff to show you next time I see you, which is the mind map is almost finished, and it's the axis mundi of telling a myth, because
Yeah.
you have to have something sacred to tell us a sacred story, and because I'm agnostic, I can't necessarily. I've not had any profound spiritual experiences that I can draw upon to sort of ground this in anything spiritual. But when I found out that consciousness is a complete mystery, and we don't know how it's created, and we don't know how it's generated, and we don't know
Hmm.
where in the brain, to the point where there's not even anything remotely close to latch onto,
Yeah.
I just thought to myself, do you know what? If there's anything sacred, if there's anything mysterious and awe-inspiring, it's the mind. This subjective felt experience, just like Keating's is showing you the emotion of it, the passion of it.
Yeah.
And all these other teachers are they're so left brain, meticulous, methodical, writing it down and repeating it, repeat, repeat,
Yeah.
repeat. And Keating's is saying, no, 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 embody it, live it, love, go out, have sex, go out and then tell a poem. He's really saying embody, live life, and as you say, suck the marrow from the bone. And I just think to myself, that is with myth making, you're trying to get to that right side of the brain. You're trying to go for emotion. You're trying to go for resonance. You're trying to go for relation. You're trying to give people the whole. And the best way to do that is through poetry. And the best way to do
Hmm.
that is art, poetry, and symbolism and the like.
Yeah.
So that was my takeaway from Dead Poet Society, basically towards my own work.
Well, yeah, and it's also when you're using your consciousness, also it is godlike because the world around you, the material world, is incredibly limited. It's limited by numbers and measurements and things. When you're using your consciousness and you're imagining, it is unlimited. There is absolutely no limit, you know?
Yeah, Stephen King said something along those lines. He said when he first sat down to write a book, he felt this fear. He was like, "Oh my God, I can write anything. My imagination is the limit, and there's no limit to my imagination. I can do anything that I can want to manifest in my mind. I can."
Yeah.
And he was like, it's powerful. It's a powerful feeling. It's godlike to be like, although it's just a mental image in each subjective mind, those minds can go on to create spaceships that fly to the moon,
Yeah.
or they can create planes that fly, or they can create medicines that heal billions of people. And it's from the imagination. So that's pretty powerful.
Well, and my definition of magic and who a magician really is someone who can take those imaginative ideas and actually manifest them into the reality,
Mm, mm.
and that's a power. Yeah, that's kind of what Isaac or the science fiction author you're talking about.
Isaac Asimov
Yeah,
and Arthur C. Clarke.
Arthur C.
Yeah,
Clarke is
yeah,
sort of saying, yeah, but
absolutely.
but
We've
anyway,
we've 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 managed to touch upon a lot of literature there. We've done
yeah.
we've done uh Dead Poet Society, Whiplash. What was it we just talked about just there as well? Loads
Um,
of movies. We've had loads of movies.
Yeah. No, we touched on quite a bit. Yeah. I think I certainly got a lot out of this conversation. I've talked to you quite a bit, and there was some new nuggets that I got from your thinking in between those times. So
Oh
yeah.
yeah, got lots of crazy ideas. I'll share some more with you. It's
Yeah.
interesting talking to you because you're a poet. You've got that right brain sensibility, and you're into filmmaking. That's how I my poetry is through filmmaking. I understand metaphor and
Hmm.
analogy through the visual image. Less so. You're very literary and you're very cinematic. But it's good to talk to you because it's nice talking to people who are poets that use language in a certain way that they kind of have an instinct for what I'm doing. Whereas if I'm talking to a scientist or a historian,
Yeah.
it doesn't fall the same. It's not, they're not using the same language. They're not thinking the same way.
Well, no,
But
they're the definition of limited. Like they're only interested in things they can see and prove, and like they're very smart, but they're but they're
yeah,
limited. And if they
they
like the question of consciousness, they're not actually really that interested in it. They're
yeah,
not
there's a lot of
interested in it
I've come across that. Yeah, I've come across
because
scientists who just go, it's just a phenomenon.
yeah,
Somebody out there has actually said, and this makes me laugh. They've actually said it's just a byproduct. Don't make a
yeah,
big deal about it. I'm like, holy shit! You need to go
yeah,
and see Mr. Keating and spend a year with him, and
yeah,
then you'll
exactly.
understand more about what's actually
Well,
going on.
what interests you is the meaning. And there's nothing more
Yeah,
meaningful than consciousness. What interests them is sort of an answer.
yeah,
And if
yeah.
there is no answer, then they have no interest. But you're
Mm.
like, if there is no meaning, then I have no interest, you know?
Yeah, exactly. If there's no meaning,
Like, why do
absolutely.
like endless equations in a book? Like, I get nothing, there's nothing out, I get out of that, you know?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Right, dude, I'm gonna
All
have to get
right.
myself ready for settling down, but it's been a good one.
Well, thank you so much, Simon, for sharing your time and your thoughts on the movie and your sort of your journey into the mythological realm. So that said, this was the Mythic Movie Maker podcast, and thank you, Simon.
No problem at all. Catch you in the next episode whenever we're ready.
All right, perfect.
Okay, catch you again.